The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was the center of socialism, or communism according to some, and managed to be the stronghold of the left for nearly 70 years. Its establishment dates back to 1917. With Russia's entry into World War I in 1914, class conflicts developed with Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. By 1917, the Russians had lost territory to Germany in the west, while in the south they had seized the cities of Trabzon, Rize, Erzurum, Bitlis, Mukvan, and Hakkari from the Ottoman Empire. However, by 1917, the communists, who called themselves Bolsheviks, started a movement against autocracy, a one-man regime where all political powers are held alone and not subject to any legal trial. At the head of this movement was Vladimir Lenin, a name known worldwide. On October 7, 1917, the Bolsheviks, under Lenin's leadership, decided to launch an armed uprising against the Russian government. Faced with this uprising, Tsar Nicholas II, the head of the Russian Empire, lost control of the army and was forced to abdicate. With this revolution, the anti-war Bolsheviks decided to completely withdraw from World War I in 1917. While the Russians handed over the lands they took from the Ottomans to Armenian and Georgian rebels, later the states of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan were established in this region. On the other hand, taking advantage of the chaos created by the October Revolution, Finland under Russian control and Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia under German control declared their independence one after another in 1918. A year later, Ukraine established an independent socialist government and declared independence from Russia. Thus, the number of countries gaining independence by taking land from Russia reached 38, while the internal unrest in Russia continued throughout the country until 1921. The Bolsheviks eventually emerged victorious from the Civil War and succeeded in establishing authority throughout Russia. The next step was to decide on the federal structure of the newly established state. Georgy Stalin, the People's Commissar for Nationalities, argued that all republics should have special status within the Russian Soviet Socialist Republic, while Lenin strongly opposed this and advocated a federation in which all republics had equal status and the right to secede whenever they wanted. In the end, Lenin's view prevailed in the formation of the federation, and this event is considered Stalin's first disagreement. On December 30, 1922, the Soviet Socialist Republics of Belarus, Ukraine, Central Asia, and the Caucasus united with the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, officially establishing the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The newly governed Soviet Union decided to support all socialist parties worldwide to promote the spread of socialist revolutions. This call found response in countries such as Mongolia and China, while in countries like Turkey and India received positive responses aligned with common goals. From May 1920 halves, Lenin's mother, whose health was deteriorating, wrote a will mentioning the danger of leadership conflict and especially emphasized that Joseph Stalin had dangerous thoughts, advising on the creation of powers if Stalin were chosen as leader. Then, in 1923, Lenin, who had become paralyzed and unable to speak, passed away on January 21, 1924. After Lenin's death, Joseph Stalin and Lev Trotsky fought for the Soviet seat for a while. In 1927, Trotsky, known as the founder of the Red Army, was exiled from the Soviet Union in 1927. Stalin gained absolute power in the Soviet Union and many innovations were made in the economic field. In the first five-year plan, the Soviet Union advanced particularly in industry and agriculture, establishing 210,000 agricultural farms and 6,000 agricultural stations. These stations were equipped with 500,000 tractors. By the end of the 5 years, the goals were achieved, and everything planned had been realized. During the second five-year plan, launched in 1933, 4,500 factories and energy facilities were built and put into service in the Soviet Union. During the period of the third five-year plan between 1938 and 1941, nearly 3,000 industrial facilities were established. Thus, before World War II, approximately 9,000 large-scale industrial facilities were added to the Soviet economy. By the end of 1940, heavy industry production in the Soviet Union had doubled in 20 years. In 1938, as Germany gradually began attacking neighboring countries, Stalin, considering all possibilities, signed a non-aggression pact with Germany in 1939. Stalin signed this agreement to ensure his country's security against the Nazi threat. This agreement provided Hitler with an opportunity to launch attacks on Poland and France. In 1939, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia also joined the Soviet Union. With Germany's attack on Poland, the Soviets recaptured lands formerly belonging to Belarus, solidifying the western borders of the Soviet Union. Thus, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics became a state consisting of 15 Union republics. Although Germany had signed a non-aggression pact in 1939, it launched a sudden attack on the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, without declaring war. Caught unprepared, the Russians were initially forced to retreat. Despite Soviet generals' warnings that Hitler could not be trusted, Stalin, who did not make sufficient preparations, was almost shocked by this sudden attack. In western Ukraine, supported by Catholics and wealthy families from former lands, the German army reached the outskirts of Moscow-Leningrad and looted 32,000 large and small industrial facilities along their path under Hitler's orders. Despite repeated assaults on Moscow, the Germans failed and then turned their attention to Stalingrad. Even though Stalingrad was completely surrounded by the German army, the city did not surrender thanks to the devoted defense by the Red Army, mainly soldiers from the Turkic republics. After this failed operation, the weakening German army could not hold against the Red Army and was forced to retreat to Poland. After expelling the Nazis from their territory, the Red Army managed to liberate all of Eastern Europe from Nazi occupation, starting from Poland. At Stalin's order, the Red Army advanced toward Berlin. With the fall of Berlin in May 1945, World War II ended and the Soviet Union was on the winning side. The destruction of the war was severe for the Soviet people, with 27 million casualties from various nationalities, mainly Russians. Since major cities were heavily bombed, civilian losses exceeded military casualties. Damage to industrial regions and the decline in agricultural production dealt a serious blow to the economy. During the war, socialist parties resisting occupation in Europe, with the support of the Soviet Union, came to power in Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Albania, East Germany, Poland, and Romania, establishing socialist people's republics in these countries. In the Far East, with Soviet support, China and North Korea moved towards socialism. The security of previously besieged countries and the gains of allies were also significant developments. However, the United States, concerned about the spread of communism among its allies and implementing the Marshall Plan, caused international tension. Furthermore, the establishment of NATO in 1949 by the United States and Western Europe against the Soviet Union created a new global war threat. However, this balance of power would push the world into a new era of conflict. The Cold War was now at the doorstep. In Part 2, we will explore how this great tension between the Soviet Union and the Western world turned into a global struggle.